Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Mr. Storyteller. Before you dive into tonight's nightmare, like the video and subscribe to the channel. Also, where are you from and what time are you watching? Now, get comfortable and relax.
I never thought the worst night of my life would start with a campfire. It was late September 2019, just starting to get cold enough that the forest felt sharper, emptier. My friends and I, college juniors full of confidence and caffeine, were spending the weekend at my family's old cabin in the mountains of Vermont. It had been in my family for 3 generations, and after my grandfather passed, it sat unused for years. I hadn't visited since I was a kid, but it always had a weight to it, something that settled on your shoulders like damp wool. I used to think it was just the altitude. We arrived Friday evening. Josh, Nadine, and Greg, all close friends. We unpacked fast, eager to start the weekend off with beers, a bonfire, and ghost stories. The place hadn't changed. The creaky floorboards, that weird green wallpaper peeling near the fireplace, the attic door that never quite shut right. It was nostalgic, eerie, and oddly thrilling to be back. Around midnight, we sat around the fire pit in the backyard. The sky was ink black, the trees towering like silent sentries. Josh was in the middle of telling some half-baked urban legend when Nadine suddenly went still, her marshmallow stick hovering midair. "Did you hear that?" she whispered. We all paused, then we heard it too, rustling. Not the kind made by a squirrel or raccoon, but deliberate, heavy, like someone walking. Greg stood up, peering into the trees with his phone flashlight. "Probably a deer," he said. His voice was steady, but I saw the way he kept glancing back toward the house. We called it a night shortly after. The fire died, and the woods seemed to breathe in the darkness. I had the upstairs bedroom, the one with the window that faced the woods. Sometime around 2 a.m., I woke up suddenly. I didn't hear anything at first, but I felt watched. The kind of sensation that needles down your spine, primal and undeniable. Then I heard it again, footsteps outside, crunching leaves, soft but purposeful. I reached for my phone, but the battery was dead. Typical. I crept to the window and looked out. Nothing. But then, just as I was about to turn away, I saw someone or something standing just beyond the tree line. A tall silhouette, no light, no movement, just standing there, facing the cabin. My blood froze. I blinked, and it was gone. I didn't sleep after that. Just lay there staring at the ceiling, heart drumming like it was trying to dig through my chest. The next morning, I told the others. They laughed it off. Said I probably saw a tree stump and freaked myself out. But Nadine didn't laugh. She just looked pale. "I had a dream last night," she said quietly. "There was a man outside my window. He was smiling, but it wasn't right. His face was wrong, like it was stretched too wide." Greg cracked a joke, trying to lighten the mood, but none of us really laughed. That day, the house felt different. Colder. The shadows longer. The walls closer. Josh went into town to get more beer. He never came back. By sunset, we were panicking. Greg wanted to go out looking for him, but I had a bad feeling. A choking dread that made it hard to breathe. We stayed together, locked the doors, and tried to wait it out. That night, everything unraveled. Around 1 a.m., we heard someone walking up the porch steps. Slow, dragging steps. We froze. Then came the knocking. 3 heavy thuds. Not rushed, not panicked. Like whoever it was knew we were inside and knew we couldn't do a thing about it. Greg peeked through the peephole, then recoiled. "What the hell is that?" He didn't describe what he saw. He just backed away, pale and shaking. The door rattled once, then silence. We stayed awake, huddled in the living room until the sky began to lighten. When we finally dared to open the door, we found deep, claw-like gouges in the wood. Not scratches. Gouges. Like something had tried to tear it open. We were done. Nadine and I packed our stuff. Greg wanted to stay and wait for Josh, but we convinced him it wasn't safe. We were going to leave as soon as the fog lifted, but we never made it out. The fog didn't lift. By noon, the entire cabin was surrounded by it, thick, choking mist. You couldn't see more than 10 feet ahead, and the woods were silent. No birds, no wind, just a heavy, unnatural stillness. We tried to drive through it, but the road was gone, not blocked. Gone. Trees where the gravel should have been, paths leading in circles. It was like the forest had changed while we slept. That night, the whispers started. At first, I thought it was the wind, but it wasn't. It was voices, hissing just below the threshold of comprehension, calling our names, begging, laughing. Nadine lost it first. She started screaming, saying there were hands under the floorboards trying to pull her through. Greg and I held her down, but her eyes, God, her eyes, she was looking right through us. She vanished the next night. 1 second, she was sitting by the fireplace. The next, gone. No sound, no struggle, just empty space where she'd been. Her backpack still there, her jacket draped on the chair. Greg and I searched for her until dawn, but there was nothing. Just that suffocating fog and the growing sense that we weren't alone. That night I found the attic door open. It hadn't opened in years. I knew that because the key had snapped in the lock when I was 12. But now it stood ajar like it was waiting for me. I should have run, but something pulled me. Curiosity, fear, maybe something worse. The attic was dust-choked and dark. I flicked my flashlight and the beam fell on something that made me step back. A figure. No, a mannequin. No, a corpse. It was Josh. But not Josh. He stood in the corner, perfectly still, eyes wide open, skin pale and cracked like old porcelain, and his mouth was stitched shut. When I got closer, he moved. Just his eyes. They rolled toward me. Then his lips trembled against the threads. He was alive. I screamed. I ran. Greg came up, saw him, and retched. We tried to move him, but the moment we touched him, his skin crumbled, and he fell apart in our arms like ash. That broke Greg. He started muttering to himself, pacing, staring out windows like he could see something I couldn't. That night, he went outside, said he could hear Nadine calling him. I tried to stop him, but he shoved me back. I watched him walk into the fog. He didn't come back. Now I was alone. The fog pressed against the windows like it was alive. The air inside thickened with the scent of rot and something metallic, and the whispers got louder. They weren't outside anymore. They were in the walls, in my ears, in my head. I started seeing things. A face in the mirror that wasn't mine. Hands reaching from beneath the bed, eyes watching from the vents, and always, always that figure in the woods, closer now, almost at the porch. The night before I escaped, I dreamed of my grandfather. He was standing in the basement, motioning for me to come. When I woke up, I went down there and found the real horror. There were markings on the walls, ancient, carved deep into the stone, symbols I didn't recognize, and in the center, a circle of bones and ash. I realized, with sickening clarity, that this house was a gate, a thin place. My grandfather hadn't built it, he'd been guarding it, and now it was open. The fog was the key. The deaths, the fear, the rituals long forgotten had all been feeding it. I burned it. Every floorboard, every cursed artifact. I doused the house in gasoline and set it ablaze. And when the fire reached the basement, I swear I heard something scream. Something massive, ancient. The fog recoiled. The air cleared. I staggered through the trees until I reached the road. A truck driver found me 2 hours later, delirious and covered in soot. They never found the cabin, or Josh, or Nadine, or Greg. I've spent years trying to understand what happened, talking to occultists, researching thin places, poring over my grandfather's journals. What I've pieced together is this. The house sat on a wound in the world, a tear, and something was trying to come through. I stopped it, but sometimes late at night I hear whispers again. Faint, almost like wind, almost. And when I look outside my window, I swear I still see that figure, standing at the edge of the trees, waiting.
Story number 2.
I used to think fear was something you could rationalize, adrenaline, stress, a trick of the brain. That was before I moved into apartment 3B. It was early 2021, just after my divorce. I needed a fresh start, and when I found a cheap 2-bedroom in an old brownstone in Flatbush, I jumped at it. The landlord said the building was over 100 years old, mostly intact, original floors and fixtures. It had charm, peeling wallpaper, creaky stairs, and an odd chill that clung to the hallways no matter how high the radiators hissed. But it was cheap, and I was broke. I moved in on a Tuesday. The first night was uneventful, except for a strange knocking sound behind the walls. I assumed it was pipes, maybe rats. Brooklyn is full of both. By Friday, I was noticing odd things. The front door would be unlocked in the morning, though I knew I'd locked it the night before. My cat, Ripley, began hiding in the kitchen cabinets, hissing at empty corners. And there was this constant feeling like I wasn't alone, like someone was just behind me, watching. One night I woke to the sound of footsteps in the hallway outside my bedroom. Slow, deliberate. My heart pounded. I grabbed the bat I kept beside the bed and swung the door open. Empty hall. But the lights were flickering. I slept with the light on after that. A week later, I came home from work and found something waiting for me, a handprint on my bathroom mirror. Long fingers, too long, and smeared across the glass were the words, "You look just like her." I froze. The door had been locked. There was no sign of a break-in. I checked every room. Nothing. I called the landlord the next morning. He sounded tired. 3B? He asked. Yeah, people don't usually stay long in that one. It's got history. When I pushed him, he got cagey, said if I was having trouble, he'd let me out of the lease early. I didn't know what he meant until I started digging. 2 tenants before me, Riley Mendoza and Clara Huang, both disappeared. A neighbor said Clara moved in alone, just like me. They found her bathtub filled with blood, but no body. No fingerprints, just one word written on the wall in her own handwriting, mirror. I should have left right then, but I didn't. I told myself it was urban legend, the mind filling in blanks. I was stubborn and maybe a little reckless. Then came the dream. I was in my bathroom, but it wasn't mine. It was older, yellowed, moldy. I looked in the mirror and my reflection didn't move. It just stared. Then it smiled and I felt my whole body lock up. A smile that stretched too far, too wide, splitting open in places no mouth should. I woke up screaming, sweat-soaked and cold. The next morning, the mirror was cracked down the middle. Not shattered, just a single perfect split like a wound. That night, I took it off the wall. Behind it was a hole, about the size of a dinner plate, jagged edges, and beyond it, blackness. Not drywall, not wood, just black, like the inside of a tunnel that didn't end. I stared too long, and I swear it felt like something was staring back. I covered it with plywood, bolted it down, I didn't sleep. 3 days later, Ripley vanished. No broken windows, no open doors, just gone, like she'd stepped out of existence. That's when I started hearing her. Not Ripley, the woman, in the walls, crying, whispering, sometimes laughing, low and broken like someone trying to remember how. One night I followed the sound. It led me to the mirror I had stashed in the hall closet. I shouldn't have kept it, but something made me hold on. When I looked into it this time, I saw the bathroom again, but it wasn't mine. The tiles were red with rust or blood, the lights flickered, and in the reflection was a woman standing behind me. She looked like me, same eyes, same hair, but twisted, like a version of me that had grown up wrong, dead eyes, slashed wrists, a mouth that never closed. I turned to run, but my reflection didn't. She just kept watching and smiling. After that, things escalated fast. Furniture moved on its own. The smell of rot seeped into the walls. I found claw marks on my arms when I woke up. I'd hear scratching at night from inside the plywood. Sometimes soft tapping, like fingernails on glass. One night I came home to find every mirror in my apartment turned to face the wall, all except the bathroom mirror. That one had pulled itself free of the closet door and was back on the wall. That's not the scariest part. The scariest part is what I saw in it. Not the woman, not me. Ripley, my cat. Hanging upside down from the ceiling by her tail, head turned the wrong way, blinking slowly. She was gone when I turned around. That night, I made a choice. I grabbed a hammer and smashed the mirror to pieces, tore down the plywood, and I stared into the hole again, deeper this time. I shouldn't have, because something moved inside it. A hand, thin, gray, fingers too long, reaching for me. I staggered back and it almost got me. Scratched my neck. Blood ran down my collarbone, cold and thick. I screamed. Slammed the bathroom door, moved out the next morning. I didn't tell the landlord, I didn't go back, I didn't even break the lease. I just ran. But here's the thing, I still see her. In reflections, in bus windows, in puddles. She always looks like me, only wrong. More rotted, like she's decaying the longer she's out. Sometimes she mouths words to me, the same ones over and over again. Me in. I don't own mirrors anymore. I keep the windows covered. I sleep with the lights on. I haven't spoken this aloud, not to friends, not to therapists, not even to my own damn family. But if you ever move into apartment 3B on Harlow Street and you hear knocking behind the walls or see something watching from the corners of the mirror, don't look too long. And for the love of God, never answer your own reflection.
Story number 3.
I was 17 the first time I saw the Hollow Man. It happened in the summer of 2004 during a visit to my cousin Lyle's place in rural Pennsylvania. He lived on a small farm surrounded by dense woods and cornfields. No neighbors for miles, no streetlights. Just an old 2-story farmhouse with peeling paint, buzzing cicadas, and a basement that reeked of wet dirt and rust. It was supposed to be a break. My parents thought some time away from the city would help with the night terrors I'd been having. They didn't know those nightmares weren't dreams. They were warnings. Lyle and I used to hang out in the barn loft or play flashlight tag at night. One evening, we were sitting on the porch, drinking warm Coke and watching fireflies blink over the fields. The moon was half hidden behind clouds, and the air was heavy with the smell of turned soil. That's when we heard the bell. It came from the cornfield, a small metallic ting-ting, like an old dinner bell being tapped. The strange part? There was no bell out there, none that Lyle knew of anyway. We stood up staring toward the field where the tall stalks swayed gently. Then we saw it, something moving between the rows, not walking, gliding, smooth and unnatural. I laughed nervously. Probably a deer, but Lyle's face had gone pale. It's too tall. He was right. Whatever it was had to be over 7 feet high. No flashlight, no eyeshine, just a shadow among shadows. We backed into the house and locked the doors. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing the bell, faint but steady. Ting, ting, ting. Around 3 a.m. I got up to check the window. It was standing at the edge of the field, tall, thin, not quite human. Its arms were too long, and its skin, or what I could see of it, was smooth and pale, like candle wax. No face, just a hollow where its features should have been. A void, as if its head had caved in, swallowed by itself. Then it lifted something in its hand. A bell. It rang once, I blinked, and it was gone. The next day, I told Lyle. He was quiet, then said, "You saw him." We didn't talk much after that. By the third night, the dreams came again. I was standing in the cornfield. The stalks bent away from me like they were alive, guiding me inward. The sky was red, and the world had gone silent. No bugs, no wind, no breath. Just that bell ringing closer and closer. Then I saw the hollow man. He stepped out from the rows, slow and deliberate. Every movement cracked the air like ice snapping. And when I tried to run, I couldn't. My body wouldn't move. He didn't walk. He hovered. And as he reached toward me, I saw into the hole where his face should be. It wasn't empty. It was full of teeth. I woke up screaming. Lyle was gone. His bed was empty, sheets still warm. I ran outside barefoot, yelling his name, but the world felt muffled, as if something were pushing down on it. The fields looked taller, darker, as if they'd grown overnight. I didn't dare enter them. I found Lyle's footprints leading to the barn, and inside, hanging from the rafters by one ankle, was a cowbell tied with frayed twine. No blood, no body, just the bell swaying gently. Ting, ting, the police came, said he probably ran off. No sign of struggle. I was sent home early. My parents called it trauma, said my mind invented things to cope. But I know what I saw. The hollow man took him. I tried to forget. For years I buried it, until this summer, 20 years later, when I heard that same bell again. I live in Chicago now, far from any fields. But last month I was walking home after midnight when I passed a narrow alley. Ting, ting. It stopped me cold, that high metallic tone. Then I saw him, standing just beyond the streetlight, same height, same long limbs, same hollow face. He raised his hand. The bell rang once. Since then I've seen him more often, reflected in windows, standing at the end of grocery aisles. Once, crouched on the ceiling above my bed. I don't sleep much now. I think he's getting closer. Last night he was outside my door, not knocking, just standing, waiting. The bell was in his hand. He didn't ring it. He didn't need to. Because now I understand what it means. The bell doesn't summon him. It marks you. You hear it once, and it knows your name. You see it twice, and it knows your fear. The third time, it takes you. I'm writing this as fast as I can. I've heard the bell twice tonight. He's in the hallway. I don't think there'll be a fourth.
Story number 4.
When I was 12, I found a VHS tape in the woods behind our house. It was late autumn, the air brittle and sharp with rot. My dog Penny had been barking at something near the creek that cut through our property in rural Maine. I ran over, expecting a squirrel or raccoon, but instead I found her pawing at a rusted metal box half buried in mud. Inside it, wrapped in layers of old wet flannel, was a single unmarked VHS tape. I should have left it there, but I was curious, and kids do stupid things. Back home, I dried it off and popped it into the VCR in the basement, one of those old wooden paneled TVs that buzzed like a wasp when it turned on. The screen went black for a few seconds, then static, then something else. At first, it looked like home footage, grainy, black and white. A man stood in a cluttered living room facing away from the camera. He wore an old-fashioned suit. His body twitched every few seconds like he was being fast-forwarded in bursts, though the video was playing normally. He stood still for a long time. Then, without turning, he lifted his arm and pointed to the left side of the screen. Nothing happened. The tape cut to static again, then to another scene. A hallway now, dim and flickering. The same man standing at the far end, motionless. The walls seemed to close in behind him. The floor creaked like someone was walking closer, but the man didn't move. I was about to stop the tape when something happened. The screen went black for a full 10 seconds. Then I saw my basement. The grainy video showed the very room I was sitting in. Same couch, same lamp, same flickering ceiling light, only it wasn't live. It was night in the footage. The basement window showed pitch black sky, and the couch, my couch, had someone sitting on it. A figure, shadowed, perfectly still, staring directly at the screen. Then, in the corner of the video, a date appeared. Tomorrow, I ripped the tape out and threw it in the trash. That night, I barely slept. Every sound made me jump. Every creak of the house felt deliberate. Penny stayed glued to my side, ears pinned back, growling at nothing. When I finally drifted off around 4 a.m., I dreamed of static, endless, screaming static that shook the walls and made my teeth vibrate. And behind the noise, the figure sat on my couch, smiling with a mouth that was far too wide. I woke up with blood in my ears, and the tape back in my room. I didn't tell my parents. Who would believe me? I buried the tape that afternoon in the woods, 2 feet down, in a new spot. But that night, I woke to the sound of the VCR clicking on downstairs. I crept down, heart in my throat. The TV was already playing. The footage showed my backyard, my room, my window, from the outside. And then suddenly the figure appeared. It was closer now, standing in the yard, head cocked, staring at my house. The screen went black. I unplugged the VCR. I threw the TV breaker. I did everything I could. It didn't matter. Every night after that, the tape came back, sometimes on my pillow, sometimes in the fridge, once inside the microwave, already halfway through playing. Each night, the footage got closer. The man, if that's what he was, would be nearer to the camera. By the 5th night, I could see his face. It wasn't right. His eyes were too far apart. His skin was stretched thin like wax over bone, and where his mouth should have been, there was only a small black hole, not a wound, a tunnel, as if something inside were waiting to crawl out. The 6th night, the footage was of me sleeping. The camera angle was from above. There was nothing in the corner of the room, but halfway through the footage, something dropped from the ceiling. Not fell, lowered. The man, hanging upside down by his ankles like a puppet on strings, slowly descending until he was inches above my face. He never touched me, just hovered, watching. Then the tape ended. That was the last night I slept in that house. I begged my parents to leave, said anything I could. Eventually, I faked being sick and stayed at my grandmother's place for 2 weeks. When I returned, the basement TV had been destroyed in a storm. Lightning had hit the house, they said, fried the circuit. I was relieved. Until I found the box in my closet again. Same VHS. Only this time it had a label. Play me when you're alone. I burned it. Watched it melt and warp in the fire pit behind the barn. It screamed. No exaggeration. It actually screamed as it burned, like air escaping a corpse. I haven't seen the tape since, but last week, for the first time in 20 years, I started dreaming in static again. And this morning, I got a package in the mail. No return address. Inside was a blank VHS tape. And a note. You're never done watching. I don't own a VCR, but sometimes, in the middle of the night, I hear one playing downstairs anyway.
Story number 5.
I've never told anyone what happened at Lake Widow. It was the summer of 2016. I had just turned 24, freshly graduated and heartbroken, needing a place to get away and breathe. My aunt offered me her cabin, an old, weathered A-frame on the edge of a remote lake in Oregon. No cell service, no Wi-Fi, just trees and water and silence. It sounded perfect. The lake was called Widow's Hollow on the old maps, but locals had long since shortened it to Lake Widow. No one lived around it anymore, just abandoned sheds and rotting piers over black water. The air was always cool, even in July, and the clouds hung low like they didn't want to leave. It didn't take long before I noticed something wasn't right. The cabin was fine, dusty, creaky, but livable. But the lake, it never made a sound. No ripples, no birds, no frogs or fish jumping. Even the trees around it seemed frozen. It was like the lake was holding its breath. The second night, I woke to the sound of dripping water. Not rain, just a slow, steady plink, plink coming from the corner of my room. I turned on my phone flashlight and saw a wet trail across the floorboards, leading from the window. There were footprints, bare feet, small, as if a child had walked in dripping wet, stood by my bed, and disappeared. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next morning I walked around the property. The trail led to the dock behind the cabin, half sunken and sagging into the black water. The footprints stopped there. I should have left, but I didn't. I told myself it was moisture, mold maybe, that I'd imagined the prints in the dark. I stayed another night. That's when I heard the knocking. It came from beneath the floorboards. Not random creaks, rhythmic, deliberate knocking. 3 short raps, a pause, then 3 more. It moved from room to room, following me. By the time it reached the bedroom, the air was freezing. I could see my breath. I pressed my ear to the floor. Big mistake. I heard breathing. Something was beneath the house, and it was alive. I slept in my car that night. The next day, I drove into town, a 40-minute trip down twisting forest roads. I asked the clerk at the gas station if he knew anything about Lake Widow. He hesitated. Old place, he said. Used to be a church camp there, back in the 60s, drowned a bunch of kids in the lake. I stared at him. The lake drowned them? Some say that, he replied. Some say it keeps them, that they knock from under the water when they get lonely. I left without another word. When I got back to the cabin, the knocking had started again, but this time it was coming from inside the walls. I could hear it traveling, down the hallway, into the kitchen, closer, closer, then silence, until the bathroom mirror fogged up with no steam. A single word appeared on the glass: down. That night, the lake was glowing. Not bright, just faint, bluish light pulsing from beneath the surface like something bioluminescent was shifting far below. I couldn't stop staring. Something about it pulled me. I found myself standing at the edge of the dock, barefoot, dazed. I don't remember walking there. My feet were bleeding, full of splinters. Then I heard it again, the knocking, but this time it came from under the water. 3 slow raps, then silence, then 3 more. I backed away, fast. Behind me, the cabin lights flickered and died. I slept in the car again, didn't go back in the cabin. At sunrise, I packed to leave, but when I turned the key in the ignition, the engine wouldn't start. Then something moved in the rearview mirror. A pale face, no eyes, no mouth, just wet, sagging skin like it had been underwater for years. I turned. Nothing there. The knocking began again, this time from under the car. I got out and ran. Left everything. Just kept running until I hit the main road, waving down a truck like a lunatic. I never told the police. What would I say? That ghosts lived in the lake? That something dead wanted to be let in? I don't go near lakes anymore. I can't take baths. Even showers make me nervous. But sometimes, in the dead of night, I hear it again. In the pipes. In the walls. 3 knocks. A pause. 3 more. A warning or an invitation. And I swear the next time I check the mirror, I'll see the word down again. And maybe next time I won't be able to resist.
Story number 6.
I don't think there's a word for what my brother became. It started in November 2018. My older brother Mark went missing for 6 days. One minute he was hiking alone through Grapevine Forest in northern Vermont, and the next he was just gone. No signal, no footprints. His car was left at the trailhead, keys in the ignition, backpack still in the trunk. Search teams found nothing. On the 7th day he came back. He walked out of the forest barefoot, clothes shredded, skin pale and cracked like dry clay. His lips were blue. His eyes, wrong, too wide, like he hadn't blinked in days. When they asked where he'd been, he only said, "It showed me." He wouldn't say what. The doctors called it shock, exposure, delirium. He didn't argue. He barely spoke at all. My parents brought him home, tried to make things normal, but the truth was obvious. That man wasn't my brother anymore. Mark used to laugh with his whole body. He used to eat 3 bowls of cereal in one sitting, blast metal in the garage, talk to our dog like she was a person. Now he just sat at the kitchen table, silent, still, watching the corners of the room. After a week, we noticed he stopped sleeping. Then the animals started acting strange. Our dog, Molly, wouldn't go near him. She growled whenever he came close, then started refusing food entirely. She stared at him like he was something wearing a human skin. She died on the 3rd night after his return. No cause found. One morning, I caught Mark in the backyard, kneeling in the frost, staring up at the sky like he was waiting for something. His feet were bare again. He whispered a single phrase over and over, "It's almost here." When I asked him what that meant, he smiled. Not my brother's smile. Too many teeth. I started hearing things at night. Shuffling footsteps outside my room, whispering from the attic even though it had been nailed shut for years. A strange clicking sound like bones tapping in rhythm coming from behind the walls. Then there was the figure. I saw it for the first time around 2 a.m., standing at the end of the hallway. Tall, lank, no features, just a silhouette darker than the dark around it. Its arms reached to its knees. Its head tilted in sharp, unnatural angles as it watched me. I couldn't move. Then Mark stepped into view beside it. He didn't say a word. They both vanished when I blinked. The next day I found claw marks under my bed, deep, ragged gouges into the floorboards, like something had been waiting there. I tried to talk to my parents, but they were blind to it. They said Mark just needed time. "He's traumatized," they kept repeating, like it would fix anything. But something followed him back. I knew it. One night I saw him standing in the bathroom, staring into the mirror, not at himself, through it. His breath fogged the glass in rhythmic pulses as if he were breathing for something else. Then he dragged his fingernails down the mirror, whispering. I opened it. I stopped sleeping entirely. I locked my door. Slept with headphones in, lights on, Bible on the nightstand, even though I wasn't religious. It didn't matter, because the night before I left for good, I woke up to Mark sitting on my chest. His eyes were wide open. His mouth stretched into a grin that cracked the corners of his lips. I couldn't scream. He leaned down, and I felt something inside him. Not breath. Colder than anything I've ever known, like winter was spilling out of him, seeping into my skin. He whispered, "It wants you now." I passed out. When I woke up, he was gone. I packed a bag and ran. I've never gone back to that house. But that's not the worst part. The worst part is I still see him, sometimes across the street, sometimes standing in reflections where he shouldn't be. Last week, I saw him behind me on the Zoom call for work, smiling, mouth open too wide. I don't know what followed him out of those woods. I don't think it has a name, but it's using him. And now, it's looking for someone new. If you ever hike through Grey Pine Forest and you hear someone calling your name from deep in the trees, don't answer. It's not your friend. It's not your family. It's the thing that showed Mark something he wasn't meant to see. And once it chooses you, you don't come back alone.
Story number 7.
When I was 11, I broke into an abandoned house on a dare. It was known as the Holloway House, an old, sagging Victorian on the outskirts of our neighborhood. Every kid in town knew about it. No one had lived there since 1972, when the last owner, Agnes Holloway, supposedly went mad and hanged herself in the attic. Rumor said she still walked the halls at night, whispering secrets to anyone brave or stupid enough to listen. That Halloween, my friends dared me to spend 10 minutes inside. I lasted 7. The front door creaked open too easily, like it had been waiting. The air inside was cold and heavy, thick with the stench of mold, dust, and something metallic, blood, though I didn't realize that until years later. The wallpaper peeled like dead skin, and the floorboards moaned beneath my sneakers. Still, I walked in, alone. At first, nothing happened. Then I reached the bottom of the staircase. That's when I saw her. Not a ghost. Not exactly. Just a woman standing at the top of the stairs, her back to me, hair black and stringy, hanging down past her waist like seaweed. Her hands dangled at her sides, fingers too long, bent backwards at unnatural angles. Her feet weren't touching the floor. I couldn't move. She didn't turn, didn't speak. But I heard her anyway. Inside my head. A whisper, cold and clear. "Come look at what I made." Then she started floating down. I ran. I tripped on the front steps and scraped my knees bloody. But I didn't stop until I reached the street, gasping, sobbing, my friends pale and silent. We never spoke of it again. I told myself I imagined her. A kid's overactive brain. Trauma. Maybe sleep deprivation. But deep down, I knew she was real. And I should have known she wouldn't stay behind. Things started happening that week. Shadows moved on their own in my room. My stuffed animals shifted positions at night. I'd wake up to the closet door open, even though I never left it that way. One night, I found long, wet black hairs on my pillow. I started locking my bedroom door. Didn't help. At 2:11 a.m. every night, I would wake to 3 knocks. Always 3. Soft, but deliberate. On the wall behind my bed, the window, the closet. Never the door. I asked my parents if they heard it, and they said no. They stopped listening after a while. Then came the whisper. Not outside, not in the hallway, from under the bed. Come look at what I made. Same voice, same words. I stopped sleeping altogether. I set up cameras, told myself it was just nightmares. I was just a kid then, but I was smart. I knew something was wrong, something I couldn't see with my eyes. But when I played the footage the next morning, my bed shook violently from 2:10 to 2:13 a.m., and under it, for just a few frames, I saw her. Twisted body, bent fingers, face stitched shut with black thread. She was smiling. I showed my parents. They said I doctored it. A prank. My mom cried. My dad got angry. They took my camera away. That night, she sat on my chest. Her fingers didn't touch me, but her weight crushed the air out of my lungs. I couldn't move. Couldn't scream. Her face hovered inches from mine. The stitches across her mouth were soaked in something black. Then they started to come undone, one by one, and something behind them started whispering. Come look. I passed out. I woke up in the hallway, nails ripped and bleeding, like I'd clawed my way out of the room. After that, I was sent away to stay with my aunt 2 states over. The visits stopped. The knocks faded. Slowly, I convinced myself it was over. But I never forgot, and I never returned to that town. Until last month. I'm 26 now. My parents passed a few years back, and I inherited the old house. I went back to clean it out, maybe sell it. The Holloway house is still there, rotting, empty. But it's not abandoned. As I passed it, I stopped. The wind died. The sky felt heavier, and I heard it again from the attic window. That same sweet whisper. Come look at what I made. I shouldn't have looked, but I did. There were people in the window, at least pieces of them. Dozens of limbs, torsos, mouths sewn shut with thread, black, slick hair tangled like roots around broken necks, eyes that blinked in slow, unnatural unison. And in the center, her, Agnes Holloway, no longer stitched, her mouth now wide open, revealing something behind her teeth that twisted and writhed. Watched. She was smiling. I ran again, just like I did when I was 11. But I think I brought her back. Again. The knocks have returned. Every night. 2:11 a.m. And this time, I'm not the only one hearing them. My wife heard them last night. She asked who was tapping on the baby monitor. There was no one there. Just static. And then the voice. Come look at what I made. I don't think we'll survive this.
Story number 8.
When I was 17, I found a strange journal buried beneath the floorboards of our new house. We had just moved into an old farmhouse in upstate New York, way out in the woods where the GPS always lost signal and the nearest neighbor was a half-mile away. My parents were thrilled. Quiet, fresh air, character. I hated it from day one. The house felt off, like it had been waiting too long for someone to come back. The journal was old, pages yellowed, leather cover rotting at the edges. I found it hidden under a loose board in the attic while exploring on a rainy afternoon. The first page simply read, "Do not read this aloud." Naturally, I did. The entries were strange, scattered thoughts, scribbled drawings of twisted figures with hollow faces, descriptions of scratching in the walls, voices whispering from drains, cold breath on the neck at 3:33 a.m. The last few pages were unreadable, soaked in something brown, stiff, and crackling. The final entry said only, "It listens when you say its name. Now it knows your voice." No name was listed. That night, I woke to the sound of something dragging across the attic floor above me, like a body, or something heavier. I froze. We had no furniture up there. My parents were asleep downstairs. It stopped after 2 minutes. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next morning, I checked the attic. Nothing there except a new mark scratched into the floor. A word, maybe, but it wasn't in any language I recognized, like runes carved by a shaking hand. That night, I dreamed of it, a shape, pale, thin, crawling across the ceiling of the attic like a spider with too many joints. It had no eyes, just skin stretched tight over its face and a mouth that pulsed open and shut like a wound breathing. In the dream, I couldn't move. It came closer and whispered into my ear with a voice made of static and rotting leaves. You spoke, I heard. You called. I woke up with a nosebleed and scratches across my arms, 3 long lines like claws. I told myself it was just sleep paralysis, stress, hormones. But then it started appearing awake, in the corner of the hallway at night, just outside the radius of the nightlight. Its head too low, dragging across the floor. It would disappear the second I turned on a light, but the whisper would remain, "You called me." The journal vanished from under my bed a week later. I never told anyone I'd found it, but my little sister, 6 years old, began talking to someone in her closet. His name's Bristle, she told me one morning at breakfast. He says he likes your voice best. I didn't respond. My mother laughed. I nearly vomited. Every night after that I heard it. The dragging, the breathing behind the vents. Once I looked under my bed during a power outage, just a flash of lightning to light the room. It was there. Its jaw had unhinged, stretching open like a snake's. Its skin writhed like something lived underneath. And from that pit of a mouth I heard my own voice, repeating the words I'd read from the journal. Do not read this aloud. It was mocking me. I left that night, took the car, didn't look back. I drove 6 hours to stay with an aunt who didn't ask questions. My family stayed. They didn't believe me. 2 weeks later, they were gone. Police found the house empty. Food still on the table. Doors locked from the inside. Only the attic was disturbed. Deep scratches gouged into the floor, and a single word carved into the wood in perfect mirrored cursive. Returned. The journal was back, sitting neatly on the attic windowsill. Now it's with me. No matter where I go, it finds me. I've burned it 3 times. It always comes back, sometimes whole, sometimes with more pages filled in, entries I didn't write in handwriting that matches mine. It always ends the same. Say it again. I don't know what it wants. Maybe I do. But I know one thing now. The name isn't in the journal. It's in your head the moment you read this. And sooner or later...
Story number 9.
I used to clean houses for a living, mostly for elderly folks or people who lived alone. Quiet, easy work. Until I took a job that made me quit for good. The woman who hired me was named Evelyn. Her voice was warm on the phone, polite but distant. She said the house was old, that she'd just inherited it after her grandmother passed. The only catch, she told me, was that I'd need to work alone. She was out of state and wouldn't be moving in for another month. I didn't mind. The address was at the edge of town, deep in a neighborhood where the roads turned to gravel and the trees grew too close to the houses. The place was big, faded, and lopsided, like it had been slowly collapsing in on itself. The front door was already unlocked when I arrived. Inside, it smelled like lavender and something sweet, but rotting. I told myself it was mold. Evelyn had left me a note on the kitchen counter. Please don't go into the basement. That door sticks, and it's easy to get trapped. Just sweep the floor above and dust the parlor. Thank you so much. I glanced at the basement door on the far side of the kitchen. It had 3 deadbolts on it, on the inside. That made no sense. The rest of the house was unnerving. Every surface was covered in thick dust, except for a single trail of footprints leading from the front door to the second floor. Not mine. They were small, bare, and dirty. No one was supposed to be here. I called Evelyn. No answer. I should have left. Instead, I went upstairs. The air was ice cold. The hallway light flickered once and died. The second door on the left was cracked open. Inside was a child's bedroom. I don't know why that scared me more than anything else. The walls were covered in hand-drawn pictures, hundreds of them, scribbled in crayon. The same figure appeared in every one. Tall, black, no face, just a long mouth filled with rows of jagged teeth. Some showed the figure standing at the foot of the bed. Some had it inside the bed. One showed it wearing a human skin. A closet door creaked behind me, and I turned, expecting it to be the wind. It wasn't. A pale hand reached out. I ran. I didn't look back. On the way down, something moved across the landing below, too fast to see clearly. But I felt it. Cold and angry, like something that had forgotten how to be human. I made it to the front door and grabbed the handle. It wouldn't open. Neither would the windows. They were nailed shut. I ran to the kitchen for my phone. It was gone. Then I heard the whisper. Low. Wet. Like breath through a clogged drain. You shouldn't have gone upstairs. It came from the basement door. I turned slowly. The deadbolts were open. Something began to knock from the other side. Soft at first, then faster. I backed away. It stopped. And then the voice came again, not from the door this time, but from under the sink. She feeds us now. I bolted, smashed a chair through the back window and climbed out, shredding my arm on the glass. I ran through the woods behind the house, didn't stop until I reached a gas station 4 miles away. The police went back with me. There was no note in the kitchen, no child's room, no drawings, no Evelyn in any city registry. But the basement? They opened it, and they found what was left of 3 cleaning ladies. Each one posed like a doll, each one smiling with their mouths stitched wide open. They never figured out who hired me. I changed my number, moved 3 towns away, and started working in retail. But sometimes when I'm alone at night and the lights flicker, I hear the knock. 3 slow taps, then a voice in my head crawling over my brain like maggots. You went upstairs.
Story number 10.
I was a night security guard for a rural construction site outside of Ely, Nevada. They were building a new highway extension out near the desert. Flat, dry land, surrounded by nothing but dust, boulders, and sagebrush. My job was easy. Drive around the site once an hour, check the perimeter fence, keep the bored teenagers from sneaking in to screw around with the equipment. That was all. I didn't know the site had a history when I took the job. Didn't know the land used to belong to a defunct mining town from the early 1900s, long since erased from maps and memory. Didn't know about the sinkholes or the disappearances. I learned fast. The first few nights were uneventful, just silence and stars. Then I started seeing shapes moving at the edge of the floodlights. Low to the ground, fast, hunched like animals, but wrong in the way their limbs bent. I thought it was coyotes at first, until I saw one stand upright for a second, silhouetted against the machinery, its arms too long, head tilted at an impossible angle. I tried to tell myself it was a trick of the light. But on the 5th night, one of the excavators was covered in deep scratches. Not animal claw marks. These were symbols, circles within circles, and a jagged spiral that hurt to look at, like your brain wanted to turn away before it could finish registering what it was. I reported it. The day crew scrubbed it off, said it was probably vandals, but that night I found the same symbols on my truck windshield, scratched from the inside of the glass. That's when the humming started. Low at first like a distant generator, then higher, deeper, rattling in my chest like an earthquake beneath the skin. Every time it started, the floodlights dimmed, and I'd feel watched, not by one thing, by many, dozens. I set up my phone to record one of the nights. I left it pointed at the machinery lot while I sat in the guard shack, too scared to even step outside. At 3:06 a.m., the humming reached a peak and cut off suddenly. Silence. Then something knocked on the shack's metal door. 4 short raps. Deliberate. I didn't answer. I didn't breathe. When I finally checked the footage the next morning, the camera had caught something. A figure. It crawled out of a sinkhole between the bulldozers, unfolding itself from the earth like a spider made of bone and rusted wire. Its head was just a hollow cavity that seemed to pull in light, and its chest opened, like a door. Inside, I could just barely make out something moving, something alive. Then the camera shorted out. I wanted to quit. I almost did, but I needed the money. I told myself it was 1 night, 2 at most. That was a mistake. The next night, the humming didn't stop. It changed. It started to sound musical, rhythmic, like something was calling. And worse, something inside me started answering. I blacked out around 3 a.m. and woke up on the hood of my truck, barefoot, covered in dirt and tiny handprints made of ash. My boots were still in the shack. That was the last night I worked there. I left Nevada the same day, drove 12 hours straight to a friend's place in Colorado. Didn't explain. I've had headaches ever since, like something buzzing behind my eyes, especially around 3:06 a.m. I dream in spirals now. In those dreams, I'm underground, crawling. The walls are pulsing, wet, humming in that awful rhythm. And ahead of me, there's a doorway in the stone, and behind it, it waits. It doesn't need a name. It just needs a voice. I think I answered it that night. And I think it's still listening.